the previous video, we looked at how to create enumerations or enums. And we created one particularly for campus in our example. And we're going to use that now in a project. Let's assume that we have a conference or workshop that we're presenting here on campus. And we're going to sign up students and maybe faculty and staff from different colleges or different institutions to attend the workshop. And we want to keep track of the registrations of the various attendees. And one of those things we want to keep track of is which college are they from. And so we're going to use the enum to allow the data entry of being just a number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 rather than typing in the name of the institution. Let me walk you through the project in its execution, and then I'll come back and show you the code. So when we open a project, the first thing it does is it asks for the name of a data file. Now, I specified attendees.txt as the default file, and so rather than have to type that in, the user, if they wanted to accept that as the default, could just press the enter key. And then it displays a menu system. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in the letter A for displaying attendees alphabetically. And those are the attendees that came in from that text file. And there are our attendees listed as last name, first name, and campus. And we're told there's a total of 19 attendees registered. Before I add and remove an attendee, let me show you the registration by campus. And I'm going to press the letter D. And it goes through the attendees and lists them by campus alphabetically within each campus. So South Mountain Community College has, looks like 6 attendees. Arizona State has 4. NAU has 3. U of A has 3. And Grand Canyon has 3. And I can get back to my menu by entering a question mark. And let's add an attendee. So I'm going to choose B. My attendee's first name is going to be Janice. And the last name will be Rainford. And then I choose a school. And we're going to have this attendee come from Grand Canyon. So I'll press the letter 5. And the data is saved, and I can then enter another attendee, so I can do more than one. If I just leave it blank, I can exit. And you'll notice up here, if I leave the last name blank, it'll exit, and if I put a 0, it'll exit. So I give them multiple opportunities to exit. And now we'll do an A again to relist the attendees, and you'll see that Janice is now in the list alphabetically. And if I do a D, she shows up there under Grand Canyon. Let's go ahead and remove her. So I'm going to do C, and I set this up so that we're going to remove them based on the school. So we know that the person we want to remove is Janice. She's from GCU. I'm going to again press a 5. And then I have it show index numbers for the different records. And Janice is index 14. And if that's who I want to eliminate, I can enter 14. And then I get to confirm. Now if I say no, I'm told the removal was not confirmed and thus did not occur. And so again, if I list the attendees, Janice is still registered under Grand Canyon. Let's try that again. And this time I'm going to confirm that yes, I do want to remove her. And I've been told that Janice Rainford has been removed. Data saved to my data file of attendees.txt. And if I do an A to list, you'll see she's no longer there. To exit, I simply press X. And I'm told goodbye, and the program has ended. So that's the program we're going to create. Let's take a look at the code. So here then is the code of our project. And I started by creating the class for my enum of campus. We've already seen that, and we had to import the enum class from the enum library. And then I set up a class called Attendee. And my constructor is I'm going to pass it three variables, fname, lname, and campus num. Fname and lname are strings, campus num is a number, and campus num would be the number of our enum. So when I'm passing the enum here, I'm going to say self._campus equals, and I want to take the campus enum class and pass it the number. And that's going to set that object as a campus object. Then we have our mutator methods. We're just simply going to set those values, same way that we did up here in the constructor. Our accessor methods, we're going to get the first name, get the last name, we're going to get the campus number. When we get the campus number, we're going to get campus, that's our campus enum object, dot value, because the right side of our equations on those constants were integers. That's the value. If we want to get the campus name, we can say self._campus.name. And remember, those names have underscores instead of the spaces because these are constant names. They can't have spaces in them. We have to follow that naming convention. But I don't want to display it with those underscores. So what I'm going to do is take my campus and replace the underscores with spaces and then return my campus. And that will give us the name. I also want to get the full name, last comma first, and that's going to be self._last name plus a literal string of a comma and a space, and concatenating the self.__ first name. I also have a get record save. And the get record save, kind of the same thing. We're going to do the first name, concatenate a comma, the last name, concatenate a comma, and then the string of the number. And where we're going to use this is when we write that data back out. Our data, let me pull up the data here for a minute. Here's the format of our data file. And it's first name, comma, last name, comma, the number of the institution as it exists in our enum. So it's a comma-delimited file, or comma-separated value file. And I say it as a .txt file. So that's the format of our data. So we have this get record save that we'll be able to write each of the records back out to that data file in that format. And then we have our dunder methods. Double underline, str, double underline. This is going to, we want to print the record. It's going to print the last name justified to the left 18 spaces. The first name justified to the left 18 spaces. And then the campus name. Remember that campus name is going to be without the underscores. Those will be replaced by the spaces. And then our double underscore LT, double underscore, this is going to be our sorting method. And we're going to sort here get full last first. Now, before when we used the sorting method of our classes and we used the dunder method of LT, we really only sort on one item. But by creating another method that combines items such as last name, comma, first name, we're now going to sort, the primary sort being the last name and the secondary sort being the first name, by using this get full last first method in comparing self to other. So it's a little trick there of being able to get around only being able to sort on one field. If you create a method that combines fields, you can do a primary, a secondary, even a tertiary sort. Okay, so that's our class. Now let's take a look at the application itself. Now I did this all in one file, so I'm not importing the class, but I could have done that. For demonstration purposes, it was just easier if we put it all in one file. So I'm going to have a couple global variables here of attendees and data file. Attendees are going to be the list of all of our attendees, and data file is going to be a string relating to the path and the file name of the data file location. So here's our main method. We have our attendees as a global. We're going to say attendees equals populate data. And that's going to breed in all of our data from the text file. So let's take a look at that method. So again, we have a global of data file. Data file, we're going to get the input from the user, enter the name of the data file, or just press enter for attendees.txt. So if they just press enter, we're going to put attendees.txt as the input in the data file. If they want to use a different file name or a different location other than the file being inside the same folder as this project, they can specify that and we'll store that in data file. If data file equals nothing, so they just press the enter key, then we're going to say data file equals attendees.txt. That's our default. We're going to try opening that file and processing it. And this is where you want to use the try except in case something goes wrong. Maybe that file doesn't exist. We put in a wrong name. We want to show the error what happened if this does not work. So you can have a variable myFile equals open, and we're going to open the data file for reading. That's where we have the character R as our second parameter. And since the data file is comma-delimited, we're going to read that data into a variable called myRecords, and we're going to split it based on the new line character. So that'll give us a list of my records, and then attendee list. This is our empty list. We're now going to go do a for loop of going through each record in this my records. So for each rec in my records, if the length of the record line is greater than 4, we want to do something. If it's not, we're going to assume we're looking at a blank line, or a line that's not really shouldn't be there. So we don't want to process that line. Sometimes you have a blank line at the end of your data file. That's pretty common, especially when we're adding a new line character to the end of records when we write them. It's pretty common we'll have a blank line at the end. And if we don't look for that blank line or process it separately, we'll end up having problems when we try to split it based on the commas, because the commas aren't there. So that's the next step. We're going to split that record, each rec, based on the commas, and put that into a list called items. It should have 3 items: first name, last name, and the number of the campus. And then we're going to call the constructor. And so in calling the constructor, we're going to say attendees.list. That was our attendees list up here. .append. And what we're going to append to that list is calling the constructor of our attendee class, passing it item sub 0. And I'm going to strip out any spaces in case there's a space after the or before the comma or after the commas in my data file. So items.0 is going to be the first name. Items element 1, I'm going to strip that as well. That's going to be the last name. And then we're going to take item sub 2, strip it, but we're going to convert that to an integer. And so those 3 items are what we're passing to our constructor of our class, which was up here. And that's going to add an attendee object to our list named attendees list. We're going to go through that loop for each record that was in the data file. We want to close our file, and then we're going to return attendee list. So returning this attendee list value, and that attendee list value then is going to go into my global list of attendees. Now I could have gotten around of just putting this all into attendees directly. A lot of times we try to pass data rather than use global variables. I'm kind of doing both here. I'm passing a value, but then I'm putting it into a global variable. If something goes wrong, we have an IO error. That's going to occur if they can't find the file. And if something else goes wrong, we have just a general exception. And we'll say something went wrong in reading the data, and we'll specify what happened. Okay, so that's going to bring us back to main. If the length of attendees is 0, no data was read. And if that's the case, we're going to say menu choice equals X. Then we're going to print exiting, no data read. You can try to rerun the program. It's going to go through the while loop. And since it's doing the while menu does not equal X, it's going to print goodbye. It's going to exit that loop. However, if there is data there, we're going to hit the else. And our menu choice variable is going to be a question mark assigned to it. And then we're going to come into our loop, and while we're going to hit this fork, if menu choice is equal to the question mark, we're going to show the menu. So let's take a look at that method. So here's our show menu. It's just going to print that menu that we saw earlier with our 6 different options. Then it's going to ask us to input our operational choice, and that goes back into menu choice. So now that's going to loop back in here, and if they type an A, it's going to do this display attendees. If they type a B, it'll do add attendee. C, remove attendee. D will be show campus registrations. And if it's the question mark, we'll show the menu. If it's none of those, it's simply going to ask them to re-enter their operational choice. So let's say they type in an A. We want to display the attendees. We'll come back and look at the auto-save data. This is when we add an attendee or remove an attendee, we want to be able to save the data back out. But here's our display attendees. We're going to print this year's attendees are, and we're going to print a header across here with 2 lines. Last name, first name, and campus. These are going to be justified, so it gives us some columns. And then below that, we'll just do some equal signs, do a nice underlining of those values of those columns like we see over here when we ran the program. Then I'm going to sort the list. Now again, we sort the list, it's going to use that LT dunder method, and it's going to sort on the full last first method return, which is the last name comma first name. That will alphabetize our list. And then for each person in my list, we're going to print each person. And again, we print, it's going to use the str dunder method, and we'll get our last name in a column of 18 characters, our first name in a column of 18 characters, and the get campus name in the third column. And then finally, once that loop is done, I'm going to print how many attendees are registered, and we're just going to get the length of my list. If they type in a B, we're going to add an attendee. So here's our add attendee. We're going to take our global list of attendees. I'm going to create a variable called new first, which equals a space. And then I'm going to print register new attendees. And while new first does not equal a null string, this will allow us to enter more than one attendee at a time. So then we're going to take and ask for the user's first name, and we just have blank, we're going to exit, and we're going to put that into new first. So if new first is equal to a null string, they didn't enter anything, left it blank, we're going to print input ended, and we're going to break. If they do put something, then we're going to ask them to enter the last name and put that into a variable called new last. And again, if new last is blank, we'll end and break. And then we're going to have a campus of -1. And while new campus is less than 0 or greater than 5, in this case that'll be a true statement because -1 is less than 0, we're going to ask them to enter the school. And again, we're going to use those values that were part of our enum of 1 being South Mountain, 2 being ASU, and so forth. And they can exit with the 0. So if new campus equals 0, we're going to say input ended, and we'll break there. So we have 3 different options to cancel out of this along the way. Assuming they've entered a first name, a last name, and a campus, we're going to append to our attendees list, calling the constructor of attendee with new first, new last, and new campus. And then we're going to print that they've been registered. And here we're going to call the auto-save data, which will take our entire attendee list and write it back out to the data file. So here's our autosave. Before I save it, I'm going to go ahead and sort attendees. So we'll primarily keep that list sorted. It doesn't have to be. We sort it before we print it out. I'm just going to go ahead and do that here. And we'll use the try except method again. So we're going to open that same data file that we stored as our global variable. This time we're going to open it to write. So our second parameter there is a W. And then for each rec in attendees, we are going to write each rec.getRecordSave and a new line character. And again, that getRecordSave was first name, comma, last name, comma, campus number. When we're all done, we'll close the file. We'll say the data was saved to whatever the name of the data file was. If there's an error along the way, if there's an IO error, we'll display that. That's going to occur if something happened to that file. Maybe we opened the file, we did something else within our operating system and deleted that file, we'd get this IO error. It no longer exists. And actually we wouldn't, because the W would create the write method. When we open that data file, would actually create the file if it doesn't exist. But maybe that file got locked. That would create an error. And if something else goes wrong, we'll display the general error. What if we want to remove an attendee? We're going to use letter C, remove attendee. So the type of C, we're going to ask them to enter the campus of where this attendee is from. So we're going to set campus, remove campus equals 10, while remove campus is less than 0, or remove campus is greater than 5. Where before I used a -1, I'm using a 10 here. We're going to ask them to enter the name or the number of the school, again from that Enum. And if remove campus equals 0, then they can exit. So we had here that a 0 would exit. We're going to get the campus name. Just use that in a confirmation. We're going to get the campus name, just use that in our printing. And I want to remove the underscores from the campus name. So we'll put a space in there. I'm going to print all the registrants from that campus. Then we're going to go through the list of attendees, starting with an IDX of -1. That's my variable IDX. For each XYZ, or for XYZ in attendees, our attendees list, we're going to increment IDX by 1. So the first time through, IDX becomes 0. That's my first record. And if getCampusNum, that method of XYZ, is equal to the remove campus, the number I put in up here, I'm going to print the index, the IDX, as a string, plus we'll do a space hyphen space, and then we'll get the full last name. That's going to give us the list of attendees from that school with the index values of the attendees' records. And then I'm going to simply ask them to enter the record that they want to remove. Then I'll go into IDX removal. We're going to verify. So I create a little string here of verify. Let me just stretch this out a little bit. I'm going to move my code here. I probably should have done this earlier. I'm going to stretch this out so you can hopefully see it a little bit better. So we're going to ask them, do you want to remove? And we're going to say basically first name, last name. We're going to get those values from our attendees record, our attendees list, for the record that's index IDX removal. And just so you can see the end of that. I did a little continuation character here of the backslash. This line is getting a little bit long. And then I'm simply going to input that string as verify string, get the upper value of that, and place that into verify. And notice the string contains a Y and an N as part of the instruction. So if they press Y, then we're going to get the registrant's name, again using get first name and get last name of that item, that object. And I do that so that I can simply display that we've removed them. Once I delete them here, then that value of IDX removal will have changed. Everything will have moved up. So I want to get that first. I'm going to use the delete method to get rid of attendees and the element IDX removal. Now you might be tempted to use the dot remove here. The dot remove deletes the item and not the index. So we'd have to specify what an item is here. And that generally doesn't work very well for a object that has multiple fields. It's really for a one-dimensional list. The delete though, the DEL attendees in IDX removal index will get rid of that number. And we're simply going to print that that person, the registered name that we've got up here, has been removed. And again, we're going to call that autosave data. So anytime we're making a change to attendees list, we're going to autosave our data back out. And you might say, well, why don't you do that after you've added a whole bunch of people or removed a whole bunch of people? And the simple matter is, I want to do it after every record. A, because this is a short list, it doesn't take very long to write it out, just a matter of a split second, is if I'm removing, say, 5 people or adding 5 people, then what happens after the 4th one? The power goes out or my computer crashes. That data hasn't been updated. So I like to update my data every time I make a change to it. And again, we have an exception here in case something goes wrong. If they said no, or they didn't say a why, we're going to print that the removal was not confirmed and did not occur. And we saw that happen in the execution demonstration. The last thing we're going to look at here is item D of our list, and that is show campus registration. So in show campus registration, we're going to use, again, our attendees global list. We're going to print registration by campus. The one nice thing about Enums is you can iterate through them. So for my campus in campus, this is going to go through each of the campuses that are part of the campus Enum. And then again, I'm going to get the campus name as mycampus.name and replace the underscore with a space and change that to all uppercase for printing. I'm going to print a new line character in my campus. And then I'm going to go through each of the items in attendees and look at, does the campus number of that attendee equate to the value of my campus? And if it does, I'm going to print a tab and their last name, first name, using that get full last method that we've used several times already. So what's going to happen here is it's going to print all 5 campuses, but then within each campus, it's going to print all the attendees from that campus. And that's what we saw earlier. So that is our project using an Enum as part of our custom class to hold the data from the data file. If you just jumped into this video and haven't seen the prior videos to this, I invite you to check out my Python playlist of videos. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.